Welcome to the Question Everything podcast with your host, Cameron Hogan. Before progress can be made, we first need to start with asking the right questions. The Question Everything podcast is my attempt to interview some of the most interesting people in the world as we discuss questions and actions that propelled them to where they are today. My hope is that this podcast empowers you to ask more questions about your own life and the world around you. I hope you share and enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to the Question Everything podcast. Today's guest is Jaymz Bischoff. Jaymz is one of the highest performing 24-year-olds I know. For the past few years, Jaymz has immersed himself in the financial services industry, teaching hundreds of families around the country how to achieve financial freedom. Jaymz decided to take an alternative path for most of his peers and has led to an incredible amount of success at such a young age. I've invited him here today to discuss what has been the catalyst to his success and how can other people our age learn to become more financially free. The first thing I really want to ask you that I think has separated yourself from so many other people our age is, you've taken such a alternative path and have led to an incredible amount of success recently. What made you decide to take a different direction and not go the 4 years in college or not do the normal, ordinary route that's been taught to us? What made you decide to do that in your career and life?
It's kind of tricky because my whole life, my grandma grew up she's from the Philippines, and so she grew up very traditional, work a government job, have a good pension, work your 30 years, get out, save some money, call it a day. So that's kind of how my dad grew up. That's kind of how my mom grew up. Her family was very, very the same that way. And then all of a sudden, my dad did that for a long time. So I watched the struggles of us being lower middle class most of my life growing up. Finally, I remember being maybe 16 when my dad finally broke six figures for the first time. And when that happened, he had left his retail job, being offered regional vice president position to owning a couple of gyms out in Birmingham, Alabama. And so that transition happened kind of crazy, where he jumped into the entrepreneurial world. So I kind of watched him at a little bit older of an age make that transition and that jump and free up a lot of time for him. Anyways, fast forward, he ended up jumping back into retail, sold his soul to the retail world and worked that for another couple of years. And finally he was done and jumped out and started doing motivational speaking and financial planning. At that point I left and did 2 years of service work. And when I came home from that and really just buckled down, I was planning on trying to go play football again, planning on going working, getting a 4-year degree and figuring out what I was going to do. And I sat there and thought and was like, man, I just did 2 years and didn't have a boss, and I worked as hard as I absolutely could. But you take any of my high school jobs or any other job I had, and I just did what I needed to do to make money. And so I ended up sitting down, came home, sat down with my dad and said, like, hey, all I know is there's two things I want to do in this world. Is I don't know if I can work for somebody else ever again, and I want to do something that helps people. And so we ended up talking, and I fell into this role of, I was always pretty good at math, and so the numbers kind of have always fascinated me, and just went that route of just helping people rather than the traditional route, and figured if there's another quicker way to be able to help people, why do it than go 4 years of school right off the bat. So
makes sense.
A little different, but
definitely. And what about the financial services in particular made you decide to go that route? I know you said you love numbers, you love helping people, but there's a lot of careers out there that I think would allow you to do that. What about financial services really stood out to you?
The biggest selling point to me was I feel the biggest form of slavery in this world is financial slavery. And there's a lot of hard things, but you take, my guess across the world would be 90% of people, maybe a touch less, of people live paycheck to paycheck and are just taught this very low or middle class way of living, because very few people achieve that upper class lifestyle. And there's a lot of those tips and those secrets that are held in that upper class that very rarely make it down even to the middle class. And so be able to focus my time and go a different route in the financial industry and cater towards the lower class and middle class individual to help them become lower to middle and middle to upper class is awesome. There's a lot of people that can help the upper class people. That's not my role. That's not my role. I want to help the average Joe that is just very ingrained in their mind. Your home's one of your biggest assets. You work 30 years for a company, you get your pension, your social security, and you call it a day. If I can get those people to go instead of 30 years, do it, have the opportunity to go at 20 years, that's where I feel I've made an impact in people. Plus, then at that point, if they can see the power of investing in the financial literacy world, to be able to bring that back to now their kids level, where I can deal with people our age, and now help them achieve that in, heck, 45, 50 years old. There's so much power to that kind of a world that, I mean, that's my real why. I mean, you look at the financial service world, the most millionaires produced is from this industry. And so that was really appealing to me. But I just knew that there's so much impact I can do. And there's two very big classes that hold majority of the people that aren't being helped. And so if I can provide any kind of service in those world right there, that's where I can feel I bring the most power to this world.
That's amazing, man. I just graduated from college, went to University of Nevada, Reno. A lot of my classmates that did very well throughout the whole curriculum there, they were the entire time had their eyes set on going to a large bank, a large accounting firm, large hedge fund, and to get the most high-ranking position possible right out of the gate for there. And of course, it means they're only can be stuck in a cubicle for the next decade as they work their way up that ladder. But what they do really tends to the top 10, top 5, top 1% of society. And I completely get it. There's fantastic financial rewards if done properly. But it seems as if what you're doing really brings a lot more fulfillment. I assume my accounting friends and hedge fund friends that spend all day trying to get an extra 2% on the yearly return for their clients. They spend 80, 100 hours a week just doing that in comparison to you going out and talking to the teachers of the world, the electricians of the world, the people who are working kind of everyday jobs and sitting down with their families, their kids. I assume that's just so much more rewarding.
Man, there's nothing better than having a client run up to me. I do a lot with educators, people with pensions. So if I ever go into a government building or a school that I've done a lot of work in, it's not uncommon for my clients to come up to me, shake my hand, give me a hug, and say thank you. For me to run across their kids and say thank you for helping my mom, you changed our life. It's the most rewarding feeling. Could I be making more money elsewhere? Possibly, potentially, but I feel, it wouldn't be as rewarding. All of my clients follow me on Facebook. They know my daughter. They know my wife. They know my habits, my travels, things like that. And I don't feel I'd get that kind of a connection doing it any other way.
I really love that, man. Yeah, it's incredible. Earlier you spoke on, that so many people are living paycheck to paycheck and hate their job and have to work it for 30, sometimes 40 years. What advice would you give to people who are in our situation, whether they went to college or not, let's say early 20s, that are about to fall into the habit of living paycheck to paycheck and waking up not excited about the day because they hate what they do? What advice do you give someone who's young, one might be still single, doesn't have that many commitments yet, to get out of that situation as soon as possible?
I would just say start now. There's no better time than your 20s. People say that, but they think of it as partying. But I think of it as, hey, you're in your 20s. You don't need to be living this lavish lifestyle. No one expects that of you. If you're 20 years old and you've already traveled the country, more power to you. But if you can afford to travel the world and travel the country and do all these kind of things, if you can go to Disneyland 2 times a year, you can afford to be putting $20 a month into a Roth IRA. You can afford to be putting money into your savings account. You can be paying off your debt. If you can go to Disneyland 2, 3 times a year, if you can go to Paris, you don't need credit card debt. Do as much as you can to save those things from yourself. But also, if you're in your 20s, you have 2 options. The government will tell you normal retirement age for us is 67 years old. That is 47 years of work. So, you've got 2 options. You can either A, invest in yourself and get it done earlier, or B, you can truly invest in yourself and find an avenue for you and kind of break out of that 9 to 5 mold, But if you've decided, hey, I want to be an accountant, I want to be an electrician, I want to be a plumber, and that's where I find a lot of power, and I see myself doing that for a long time because I like it, put money away, man. $20, $50, $100. In fact, one of my clients, I was sitting down with her and her husband, and she started well later in her life. She's, heck, probably 55, 57 when I sat down with her. And we started talking, okay, how much do you need to be able to retire off of? When do you see yourself being able to retire? And the answer is, well, when I can afford to. And we ran the numbers, and if her and her husband contributed $1,000 a month each, so $2,000 a month towards an income account, and did that for the next 10 to 12 years, that would put them, I believe the number was like $30,000 a year, give or take. And they were fine with that. But then I went home and I ran the numbers for someone at myself. If I started with $100 a month for me, just me, not me and my wife, just me, I'd find $45,000 a year. Just because compound interest and time is so much different starting while you're young. You can afford to do it so much more while you're younger. And that's, a lot of people don't realize that there's that big of a difference. There's two sacrifices. Do you want less money now or less money when you retire? Life's not free.
Yeah. There's no solutions, only trade-offs. Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree with that. I love that, man. I think another quote is like Warren Buffett's like, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, without a doubt. Thankfully, when I was growing up, my father, who was not into financial services at all, he was a chiropractor, also had a passion and hobby to learn about investing. So thankfully, he learned about stocks, learned about real estate, even when he didn't have to. And he ingrained in me every single night at the dinner table how important it is to talk about money and have that never be one of those topics like politics or religion that we never discuss. Money is something that affects our lives so dramatically. And like you said, is the main reason why people do things they hate. So if we understand that at a young age, I think it's great. And the power of compound interest truly is the eighth one in the world and amazing. So I love that, man. One problem that I've realized talking to friends, talking to family, acquaintances about money and about investing in general is that so many people look at it as if you're gambling in a casino. So have you heard comments like that? And if so, what is your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think investing money is kind of scary. People think it can be, kind of a gamble, a risk, a trip to Vegas, at some times. And, you're right. I always tell people that, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a gamble in every single thing we do. I mean, there's a gamble when I get in a car that I can die in a car accident. But sometimes some of these things are necessities. And the question is what can we afford to lose? And if the answer is nothing at this point, because I'm living so tight and so paycheck to paycheck, well, then we should pick a better gamble than going to the blackjack table. You know what I mean? And so a lot of times we have conversations and we figure, okay, where's best to start now until we can get a good grasp on everything. Because a lot of people don't realize that if I just put money under my mattress or I just put money in a savings account, you're not keeping up with inflation. Yes, you're saving, and that's the most important part. But that money needs to be working for you. Every dollar is like an employee. And the minute an employee doesn't work for you, if you're a manager and you have part-timers or full-timers not working for you, you're not going to hold them very long. You're going to get rid of them. And same thing with our money. If our money's not working for us, we need to put it somewhere else. Now, don't get me wrong, we need to have money in our savings account. But if you had more than what you need in your savings account, we need to put that money elsewhere because you're losing money just sitting on it.
So, yeah, it makes complete sense.
And so I think it just boils down to, in short words, just make the most educated educated decision for your situation now. If you can afford to be super aggressive, find an S&P 500. It's tried and it's true. Yeah, I mean, you'll take some down years, but it's only a down year if you pull your money out.
Makes sense, man. Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's incredible. So now that we've discussed kind of financial services as a whole and investing as a whole, I really want to focus more on your personal life, right? It's come very clear that you being young, I forgot, are you still 23 or are you 24 now? 24 years old.
Yeah, 24. I'm 24.
24.
Just turned
Okay,
24
24.
In November.
24. Okay. And from the conversations we've had in the past, it's been very clear to me that you've done extremely well in general, but especially for a 24-year-old. And I feel as if people at a very similar situation you may be in when it came to the financial services or when it comes to the way you grew up haven't had that same level of success. What soft skills like selling, communication, or hard skills have you been able to develop recently that has really set yourself up to separate yourself from the rest of the crowd and be able to support your family the way you've been able to the past few years?
I mean, that's a good question. I would say my biggest quote unquote soft skills, like the term you used, would be just know how to talk to people. How do people work? How does body language work? Can you tell when someone's frustrated with something you said? Can you tell when someone just got really receptive? Can you see the eye click when you're talking to someone and they just become really interested? Can you not manipulate, but can you manipulate body language? Do you know, like, hey, if I lean forward, they'll lean forward. If I lean back, they'll, if you know how to help the person in front of you catch interest in what you're saying, whether they like it or not, at least they catch interest and they gave you a fair shake. So just knowing how to communicate with people, knowing how people understand you, and knowing how to best deliver your spiel, I guess is the best word to put it. Whatever you're selling or whatever you're doing, can you deliver it as simple as possible that a 2-year-old can understand you? And if not, figure a way to bring it down to that level and work on your elevator pitch. If you can't tell someone what you're bringing to the table in 30 seconds in the most appealing way, you've got to figure that out, because sometimes that's all you have. And I come across, sometimes I'll work with those high net worth people, but I don't really fish in that pond too often, just because there's so many other better people than myself in that field. But if I come across a situation and I can help someone, sometimes people only have 15, 20, 30 seconds to talk with me. And if they don't know what I do in 30 seconds, I talk too much. As short delivery as possible, and as easy to understand. And that's the best way to initiate your conversation with people.
Makes a lot of sense, man. Yeah. Communication is definitely key. And if you can't tell it to a third grader, you don't know well enough yourself. So I completely agree, man. That's amazing. One thing about this podcast, one of the reasons why I'm starting it is I believe so many questions need to be asked about how we currently live life in our personal lives and in society. It's been very, very obvious that you've asked yourself questions years ago and still to this day that have propelled you to take actions to separate yourself from the rest. And one thing about this podcast that I'd love to keep in mind when I'm looking for people I want to have on is I want these people to be well-rounded in every aspect of life. Not only financially, but also with relationships, with their health. And it's become clear to me that even at such a young age, you've been able to somehow, at least to my eyes, balance so many of those plates at the same time when it comes to family, relationships, when it comes to finances. Being 24, what lessons have you learned recently when it comes to being a new father and being a pretty new husband? Do you have any advice to someone who maybe having kids in the next 5 years, or anyone watching this who just found out their wife is pregnant, whatever it may be? What advice would you give to those people?
Biggest piece of advice is probably the advice I got myself is you just entered real life. I mean, when I was single, I could make $0 a month and I knew I could scrape by. If I had a $3,000 month, that was awesome because it paid what I needed to and left some money. And I'm a very frugal person. I don't need a very lavish lifestyle. So I'm fine by myself. Okay, I got married. That's awesome. She doesn't love spending money either. So, same, obviously I needed to provide for her. So we became more stable. And all of a sudden we found out we were having my daughter. And that's when real world hit. I got diapers every month. I got, formula, whatever the situation was. real life hit, and I was like, holy cow, it's not just me and it's not just my wife anymore. We've got a full on family. This is real now. And so when that happened, I don't know how to explain it. Some people listening might know what I'm talking about if they just recently went through this. But I thought I had all switches on. I'm pretty much all go all the time, especially when it comes to work and family. But all of a sudden I must have left a switch off because a switch popped on and I rolled. I had the best month I'd ever had. I had the best month following that I'd ever had, best quarter, best end of the year. And all of a sudden I was like, holy cow, I got to keep this up. And it's never stopped since then. In fact, it's only gotten better every single year. And, you know, my daughter's 2 in February now. And it's really cool just to, there's always some sort of, I have a lot of internal motivation. There's a lot of things I want to accomplish in this world. But I really have an external motivation now. You know, if I come home and I hadn't made any money that day, I have to look my daughter in the eye still. I got to look my wife in the eye still. You know, I've got people depending on me. And so the next day I get to work even harder. Or I send out a few more texts, or I make a few more phone calls, or, you know, I try not to leave anything left on that plate because I got to go to bed knowing I did everything possible to make sure she's taken care of and that she can have the life I wasn't able to. And I had a pretty dang good life. So, you know, for her, it's going to be much better. And advice I would say is, you know, the switch is going to click. How long do you let the switch stay on? And then second to that is you're responsible for it. You know, there's no easy way out. And it can either be the biggest blessing or the biggest curse for you. It can force you to make a lot of money, or it can force you to curl up into a state of depression and anxiety and worry that you may not be ready for. So it's one or the other. And I just hope that you can find your way to the positive side, because it's such a beautiful thing to have a kid and watch her grow and, you know I have a part of that. So
That's amazing, man. That's definitely something I am looking forward to. Maybe not for the next 9 months or next few years, but in the not too distant future, I'm excited.
Don't jinx
it. Yeah, I hope my parents aren't watching. They may get a little excited for grandkids. I'm only child, so I'm all they have. They're our only hope for that. So
they're ready.
Yeah. I'm just trying to give them more golden doodles and dogs to preoccupy their time. But yeah, man, that's incredible. I've noticed that too with other friends that have had kids. It's as if the news of child coming really flips a switch internally. For in my experience, my friends, it's been most of them. There will be some that, like you said, curl up in a ball. But for the most part, it's just this newfound motivation that we never knew really existed. So I'm very glad to see that's been a catalyst for you. Now, when it comes to your work life and your family life, you know, I have a little bit of experience in the industry that you're currently in. And in my experience, it's always been, you're always on. You're always on your phone, you're always calling, you're always texting, emailing, you're always setting things up, pretty much out of necessity. And I know with your job, you're oftentimes flying to different places to talk and sit down with people. How have you been able to really have, I wouldn't call it a work-life balance, but been able to maintain, to my knowledge, a good family life when you have this job that feels like it's 24/7?
I don't want to say it's a work-life balance because that makes it sound very 50-50, which I've learned in my marriage. You know, marriage isn't 50-50. People say you both got to be 50%. No, it's not. You know, people are like, well, you got to be 80%. You got to be more than that. No, I mean, if I'm not 110% in and my wife isn't 110% in, our marriage starts swaying. And we have that conversation. We bring each other back up and we say, hey, I need you to be here. So how can I get you back up there? And I feel it's the same thing with my life and my work. You know, in work, I've got to be 110% in. And my wife knows that. She knew what she married. She knew I'm a workaholic, and that's fine. But when I'm home, my clients understand, which is the beauty of social media and me being able to have them as friends on Facebook, Instagram, heck, some even Snapchat and Be Real. They follow me and they know I've got a wife and they ask me about my family. And it's awesome because if I don't get back to them for 12 hours, hey, sorry, you know, I was my daughter's birthday. Or, you know, they don't ask me those kind of questions because they know I'm all in with them and they know I've got to be all in with my family. And so when I'm with my family, you know, phone off, when I'm with them and I'm with them, phone off. When we're doing things, we have things planned constantly to make sure we're doing things together, and date nights with my daughter, and heck, last night I turned off my phone for a couple hours because my daughter wanted to watch The Grinch with me. So phone was turned off, not even in my pocket, and I sat there and just snuggled her and watched The Grinch, because I've got to be 110% in with them if I expect them to let me be 110% in with work. And so balance, I don't love that term, family work-life balance, because it's not really a balance. It's an understanding and a compromise on both ends. And my wife knows I could be home a lot more and be with them a lot more, but we wouldn't be in the same situation we're in now. And she supports me, and she wants me to grow and do the things I want to do. And she loves that growth inside of me. And so in that same kind of expectation I have with her on that end, I know what she expects me to be as a father and what she expects me to be as a husband. And I've got to honor that same effort I put into work back into those two other categories, because I don't have different hats I put on all the time. I got to wear them all at the same time. And I've got to be on my A game with every single one of them, because she does so well with me when I'm at work. I've got to perform and make sure I take care of my responsibilities as well too.
I completely understand, man. It makes a lot of sense. It's very obvious to me that over the past few years, you've really raised your standards. I mean, to go back a little bit more than that, I've known you since freshman year of high school. I believe your sophomore year, we played freshman volleyball together, and then I believe JV also. You were always the same, talkative, communicative. You were one of my favorite teammates of all time when it came to that, and you've always definitely been a really hard worker. But it seemed as if, looking at the 24-year-old Jaymz, you've upped your standards for every aspect of life. And one thing I've learned recently is, if you want to have high-level goals that you want to reach in life, you need to up your standards. You can't expect to have the exact same habits and routines that you're doing before to reach a new level. It's simply just not going to get you there. You need to change the path to get to a different destination. When it comes to raising those standards, we talked about earlier certain goals that you have in mind. Do you mind sharing those with us? What are your goals a year from now, a decade from now, 2 decades from now, when it comes to what you're currently striving for?
I guess the best answer is, in fact, one of my colleagues, one of my rookies that I'm training right now, he's a huge inspiration to me. I didn't meet him until a couple months back. He's a cousin of my quarterback when I lived in Alabama. I've known his name and I've known of him since I was probably 10, 11 years old. His name's Ricky Stafford. He got cancer as a freshman in high school. He was a stud basketball player, stud soccer player. Obviously, that took a big hit on him and his family, and things changed. He was able to beat it, super blessed, I don't want to use the word lucky, because lucky is not a good word for that, but he overcame it. He took his challenge, and he ended up finished playing basketball junior, senior year, was a stud player. Went on a couple years later, ended up having a relapse. Came back again the second time. And he's had a lot of really hard, able to beat it again the second time. Had a lot of really hard challenges with that. His wife got cancer. She ended up passing away. Anyways, crazy story. The dude is like one of the biggest troopers I've ever met. But reason I bring that up is he's now playing professional basketball out in Germany and fulfilling his dream. And he's here in the off season with me because of not off season, during the season, with a broken finger. Doctors won't clear him. So he came back here and he was taking care of some clients with me. And we walked into a school, actually, small town called Tooele, Utah. And this lady walks up to him and goes, "Hey, you're Ricky, right?" He's like, "Oh boy, what do you know about me? Most people just know me as the jerk basketball player. You know what? Hey, yep, I'm Ricky." And she's like, "Hey, I just want you to know you were a big inspiration to my daughter. My husband coached against you when he was a coach at a different high school. Anyways, just ended up saying her daughter got cancer, was able to beat it, had cancer in her eye, was able to get it removed before any crazy situation came into play. But the reason I bring him up is that situation with that lady right there, saying you had a huge impact on my life. Your story was some of the days where my daughter was struggling and I was struggling. You were the inspiration to her, and you got her out of bed and let her know that she could be cancer. And so the reason I bring that up is I've been thinking about that question a lot lately, Cam. What do I want to be known for? I want people, when I walk into a room, just to come up and say thank you for blessing me. And not for the thank you or for the praise, but to know I really had an impact on someone I don't even know's life for the better. To let them know that I took care of their mom, took care of their grandma, took care of their future generations, and now they were able to be blessed and go to college for free, or buy a house cash, or whatever the situation is, because they were taught the things that their parents or grandparents weren't able to be taught. And so to be able to have a legacy like that, and when I pass, have people just say, he got me through it. He's the reason I was able to retire. Last story is I had a client beginning of last year sit down with me. We were looking over her situation, and hey, when do you see yourself retiring? When do you see yourself taking off your hat? She said, man, I don't think I'll be able to do it till 70, 75 years old. Didn't save, didn't do anything. And we ended up looking at her situation, and we looked over everything, and we looked over some of her assets, and we ended up just figuring out her situation. She was able to retire that June, man. And I will never forget sitting down with her and her just bawling her eyes out saying, I didn't think I was going to be able to retire for 10 to 13 more years. And now I get pictures from her all the time. She's been to the Bahamas 3 times, Galapagos Islands. She's been to Ecuador. She's been to Costa Rica. She's back in Washington all the time. And I get texts from her, hey, how's that baby doing? And stories like that of just, people really thinking they're not able to retire, and being able to help push that timeline up for them. And I saved that lady 13 years of her life. And now she's making memories and have traveled more in this past year than she's ever done her entire life going forward. And that's the reason I do what I do, is because of those stories right there. Now, I can't help everybody, and I know that. But I really hope that my impact on this world can help tons and tons and tons of people and reach out and benefit a lot of people.
Those are 2 very inspirational stories. I can't imagine the situation your friend went through with cancer. That is truly amazing. And it's become pretty obvious that you're becoming inspiration to quite a few. And again, that's why I'm putting you on this platform, to become inspiration even more. What you've done at a young age has truly been incredible. And anything I can do to assist you in reaching more people, I'm going to do, period. The one last question that I ask all my guests that I think would be perfect to hear from you. There are so many things going on in this world, some of which are very good, some of which are very bad, all of which should be addressed and we should ask questions about. In your opinion, what is the most important message you feel the world needs to hear right now?
If it doesn't start with you, who's it going to start with? There's a lot of cycles and a lot of habits that I deal with on a daily basis in my own life and in my clients' lives that set them back centuries, decades, years, months, days, whatever the situation is. And sometimes it's curses from their great-great-grandfather that they don't even know was passed down to them. And if it's not going to start with you, then where's it going to start is kind of where it breaks down. One of the biggest inspirations in my life is my grandma, who moved from the Philippines to America just for the hope of a better life. And my dad being able to grow up from, small trailer park to watching his mom buy the home of her dreams, to my dad working, thinking $30,000 a year was big time money. And now he's making, now that's his tax bill at the end of the year, some years. It's a completely different lifestyle that I've been able to see. I've been able to see a lot of growth in a lot of people, but if it wasn't for my grandma to come to the States, it wouldn't have led for my dad to be able to do the things he's been able to do, to be able to teach me to do the things I've been able to do. For me to hopefully break some cycles that have been ingrained into me that I can help her learn to be able to overcome and cut those out as well too. If it's not going to start with you, where's it going to start? If you're kind of I don't fit the 9 to 5 mold, but it's what I've been taught to do. your grandkids are going to be stuck in a 9 to 5. It's just how it's going to go. If you're content with making $60,000 a year, but you have aspirations to do more, but you settle for that, $60,000 a year is probably, or the equivalent to, is what your kids are going to be able to achieve. You know, if you think $100,000 in retirement is a lot of money, probably all you'll be able to achieve. But I've seen a lot of people start out. In fact, someone we've graduated with is completely breaking that mold and is going to be able to retire with probably more money than his parents are making now working. And to be able to see that kind of a shift in somebody's life is so impactful in my daily life. And so that's the biggest thing I would leave it with, is if it's not going to start with someone, it's got to start with you.
I love that, man. Yeah, you definitely are the person to break generational curse. You can't rely on your father to do it, or your son to do it, or your mother or daughter, whatever it may be. It has to be you. So completely agree, man. That's perfect. So the people who are listening to this and want to reach out to you, where can they find you? How can they get in contact with you? Whether it's to go over finances or just to become a friend, where would you recommend they link up with you?
Hey, email me if it's about work. Put that there, and then put my Instagram down, man. And whether you're friends with me or not, you're following me or not, send me a DM. Reach out. I'd be more than happy to sit down and chat with you, and just, you know, be able to learn from you guys as well too, because I definitely don't know everything, and I'm willing to learn a whole lot more. So reach out. Happy to help in any way, or just find a new friend, man.
Thank you so much for listening to the Question Everything podcast today. Hope you enjoy this episode with Jaymz Bischoff, and look forward to catching you all next week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Question Everything podcast. My goal here is to empower you to ask more questions about your own life and the world around you. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you were to leave a 5-star review on whichever platform you're currently listening to this on, as well as share this episode with others. Until next time, I hope that you enjoy life and ask more questions.